We're very pleased to be joined by Máximo Torero, the Chief Economist at the Food and Agriculture Organization, Ado Hussein, the Chief Economist at the World Food Program, and Victor Aguayo, the Director of Child Nutrition and Development at UNICEF. And you see all of their faces on the screen right now. They are going to speak to you about the Global Report on Food Crises 2024. And I believe we'll start first with Máximo Torero. Please, you're on.
No, thank you very much. And what we are going to do today is to give you an overview of the key findings from the mid-year update of the Global Report on Food Crisis 2024. Today, we have released this mid-year update of the Global Report on Food Crisis 2024, which draws on data available as of end of August 2024 to illustrate the evolution of acute food insecurity since the end of last year. The latest analysis shows that acute food insecurity remains persistently high, is becoming more extreme in some places and is spreading to new areas driven by conflict, El Niño impacts, and economic downturns. While there are reductions in food insecurity in some contexts, new or worse situations arise in others. The number of people facing or projected to face catastrophic IPC Phase 5 more than doubled from 705,000 in 5 countries and territories in 2023 to 1.9 million in 4 countries or territories in 2024. This is the highest in the global food crisis reporting and is mostly driven by conflict in the Gaza Strip and the Sudan. Intensifying conflicts in these 2 cases and also El Niño induced drought and high domestic food prices drove an increase in the number of people facing high levels of acute food insecurity in 18 countries compared to 2023. 8 countries, Nigeria, the Sudan, Myanmar, Ethiopia, Zimbabwe, Malawi, Chad, and Yemen, experienced increases of around 1 million or more people in high levels of acute food insecurity. Let me now look into country by country. In the case of Sudan, famine IPC 5 is ongoing in internally displaced persons site of Sam near the Fasher, North Darfur, and is expected to persist through October 2024. Many other areas throughout the Sudan are at risk of famine due to continued violence and limited humanitarian assistance. The conflict continues to drive a rapid deterioration of food security in the country, with around 26% more people estimated to face high levels of acute food insecurity during the June to September lean period compared to June 2023, reaching 25.6 million people classified in crisis or worse. This means IPC 3 or above. This includes about 755 and 300 people projected to face catastrophe phase, IPC 5, by September 2024, up from none in 2023. The conflict also had implications for food security in neighborhood countries such as Chad and South Sudan. In the case of the Gaza Strip in Palestine, remains the most severe food crisis in the history of the Global Report on Food Crisis, with almost 2.2 million people or residents still in urgent need for food and livelihood assistance between March and April 2024. The severity of the crisis has intensified, with half of the population catastrophe phase 5 during this period, up from a quarter in December 2023, February 2024. Although this was projected to decrease to 22% of the population, around 495,000 people, in June, September 2024, and available evidence does not indicate famine IPC 5, but still the risk of famine persists. Conflict insecurity also drove to a catastrophic phase 5 levels of acute food insecurity in South Sudan, 79,000 people in Jonglei and Unity states and among returnees from neighborhood Sudan, and in Menaka region of Mali, 2,600 people. The severity is in Burkina Faso, Haiti, and Somalia, where no populations were projected to in this phase IPC 5 as of August 2024. The population in emergency IPC Phase 4, requiring urgent action to save lives and livelihoods, more than double in Burundi and Eswatini, and increase in Lesotho and Malawi, mostly due to the impacts of El Niño, induced drought, conflict, and insecurity, drove increases in Chad, Mali, Myanmar, and Sudan. The number of people in IPC Phase 4 decreased in 19 countries, with the largest reduction observed in Afghanistan, followed by Kenya and the Democratic Republic of Congo. In the positive side, better harvests and stabilizing economies drove improvements in food security in 16 countries, This is Afghanistan, Kenya, the Democratic Republic of the Congo, Guatemala, and Lebanon all had at least 1 million fewer people facing high levels of acute food insecurity since the 2023 peak, but they all remain in food crisis situation. Let me stop there and pass the floor to Arif.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next, Mr. Hussein. Thank you.
Thank you, Farhan. Thank you, Massimo. Yeah, I think Massimo has pretty much covered all the data points. I would just like to emphasize some of the things which frankly he has said. One is that numbers, they are stabilizing, but they are stabilizing at a very high level. And what we are also seeing is that, like Massimo was saying, you've seen deterioration of food security situation in 18 countries, where in 8 of those countries, the deterioration is more than 1 million people, right? But at the same time, you have 16 countries where there is an improvement. And out of those 16 countries, 5 have a significant improvement of having more than 1 million people each. But at the same time, what we are seeing is the depth of hunger is increasing. Meaning, today, compared to just last year, there are 2.5 times more people in IPC phase 5, meaning a catastrophic level of hunger. I think that's one point which is very significant. The other thing which I would like to emphasize is that our displacement in these countries, the countries covered by a global report on food crisis, those numbers are increasing. And right now in 2024, the estimate is 99 million people, just in the countries we covered by the global report on food crisis. And compare that to 90 million in 2023. So almost 10 million more people. And where is this? Mostly in Sudan and in Gaza. And in Gaza also, I mean, the population is not that big, but 9 out of 10 people have been displaced and multiple times. What we are saying in terms of action, what is needed, there are 2 things. One is access. What I mean by that is physical access to people in need, whether it is in Sudan or in Gaza. Safe access and sustained access. That's critical. The second thing is basically funding. Having enough money to provide assistance on a sustainable way till the time that it is needed. Now, if you have one, it is not enough. Meaning if you have access, that's not enough. And if you have only money, that is not enough. You need both. Because if you have access and no money, there's nothing to give. And if you have all the money but no access, still nothing to give. So what we are pushing for is to make sure that there is sustained access and sustained financing for us to be able to take care of these people, whether in Gaza, whether in Sudan, or elsewhere. The other thing which is very clear is more and more, I mean, we see on the funding side, there is fatigue. In general, there is fatigue. But the problem what we see is that we need the ability to address the root causes, whether it is war, whether it is climate. Because unless we address the root causes, we should not expect the needs to come down. Why would they come down? If I am suffering because of a war today and the war continues, why wouldn't I be suffering tomorrow as well? If I need help today, I'll probably need more help tomorrow. And this is what we are seeing. And this is where the depth in hunger is going up. Very last thing before I give floor to Victor. we have information. For example, if you look at Sudan, IPC process, declaration of famine, 755,000 people. People are talking about North Darfur, Al-Fashir, Zamzam camp, places around that. But there are many, many more which are in similar circumstances, but we just don't have enough data. So in a way, even the Famine Review Committee said that the likelihood is that there are other places with similar situations as in Zamzam, but they cannot say that there is a famine there because there is no data there. So access, again, in terms of getting the information to what is happening to people over there is also very critical. I'll stop here. Thank you.
And now over to Victor Aguayo, the Director of Child Nutrition and Development at UNICEF.
Thank you, Arif, and thank you, colleagues. Good afternoon. I would like to say a few words, of course, about children and about child wasting. Child wasting is the most life-threatening form of malnutrition in children. We often refer to it as acute malnutrition. Wasting remains very high among children living in countries that are experiencing food crisis, the countries that we are talking about today. This is due to the inability of families to access and to afford, as Arif was reminding us, nutritious foods for their children. It also is due to a lack of access to health, nutrition, water, and sanitation services. Needless to say that these threats grow very fast in conflict situations, which also reduce humanitarian access to the most vulnerable children, the most vulnerable women, and the most vulnerable communities. So our global report we are referring to today highlights a concerning increase of child wasting with critical levels in 8 countries, namely Cameroon, Chad, Djibouti, Haiti, Sudan, Uganda, Syria, and Yemen. My colleagues from FAO and WFP have described the nutrition situation in Gaza is one of the most severe that we have ever seen, one of the most severe food and nutrition crises in history. And it is important to remember that nearly half of Gaza's population who are suffering from this devastation are children. I was in Gaza last week and I saw how months of war on civilians and severe restrictions to humanitarian response have led to a complete collapse of the food, health, and protection systems, with catastrophic consequences for children's nutrition. The fact is that the diets of children in Gaza, the most vulnerable to severe malnutrition, are extremely poor. We estimate that over 90% of children are eating at best 2 types of food per day, day in, day out, for weeks or months, in the context of toxic, very severe toxic stress and lack of access to safe water and sanitation. And we estimate that well over 50,000 children suffer from acute malnutrition and need immediate treatment. They need treatment now. I met doctors and I met nurses and I met nutrition workers who are implementing the programs that we support. I walked through markets and neighborhoods, or what's left of markets and neighborhoods, and I listened to the struggles of mothers and fathers to feed their children. And there is no doubt in my mind that the risk of famine and a large-scale severe nutrition crisis in Gaza is real and is happening. There is only one way to prevent it. We need a ceasefire, and we need a ceasefire immediately. And with a ceasefire, we need sustained and large-scale humanitarian access to the entire Gaza Strip. On this ceasefire and unrestricted humanitarian response, only this will allow families to access food, including specialized nutrition care for young children, nutrition supplements for pregnant women and breastfeeding mothers, and health, water, and sanitation services for the entire population. In Sudan, over 25 million people are affected by food insecurity, and this includes 3.7 million children who are experiencing severe acute malnutrition. I should say acute malnutrition. And these numbers continue to rise due to mass displacement, limited humanitarian access, disrupted health and nutrition services, and of course the onset of the lean season. So UNICEF is calling for unrestricted and large-scale humanitarian response for the early prevention, detection, and treatment of acute malnutrition among the most vulnerable children, particularly children under 5 years of age, and the mother, whose lives are under threat due to these multiple escalating crises. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I'll now turn over the floor to reporters for questions. And when you're asking, please specify which of the three speakers you're directing your question to. All right, Edie.
Thank you very much on behalf of the UN Correspondents Association for doing this briefing. A couple of questions. First, following up, aside from the conflicts in Gaza and Ukraine and Sudan, are they the main drivers for these sharp increases? Or is climate also a major driver? And why don't you do that, and then I'll go ahead. Maybe Maximo?
No, yes, very quickly. As I mentioned, El Nino has had significant impacts in several countries in Africa, which has also increased the numbers. But the biggest numbers are coming from Gaza and Sudan. But clearly, what we are observing, for example, in Southern Africa, El Nino induced drought led to widespread harvest failure between 2023 and 2024, and significant deaths of livestock over large parts of Angola, Botswana, Lesotho, Madagascar, Malawi, Mozambique, Namibia, Zambia, and Zimbabwe. And this is also affecting the lean season for November 2024. In West Africa and the Sahel, levels of acute food insecurity has also increased because of this. And Nigeria has the largest increase in the number of people facing high levels of acute food insecurity, also driven by inflation, food inflation, and is also followed by Chad. So it's climate, inflation, but the biggest impacts are in Gaza and Sudan, as it has been mentioned.
And does this, I know the study compares 2023, and is it part of 2024 or not or is it only 2022, 23? I'm not quite sure.
The data goes until August 2024. So it compares with the last report that was at the end of the year in December, and it compares up to August 2024, where we look at the updates in that sense.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else on the floor? Okay. Do we have any questions from our reporters online? If so, please. I don't see any hands raised, but if you do, please let me know. Okay. Okay. I see nothing. So I would like once again to thank our guests, Máximo Torero, Arif Hussein, and Victor Gallo. Thank you all for your briefings, and have a great day.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks. Have a good afternoon, everyone.